This is the Maida Initiative, conversation without compromise.
What that is that, they're trying to remind the people of how powerful the Chinese Communist Party is, and that they want to control that region of East Turkestan because they want to remind the rest of China how powerful they are. And so that just kind of goes into a little bit of their ideals and beliefs. And with their structure, personally, I still am having a hard time understanding what they want as a country and what they want as a party and what the leader is trying to get at with this.
So I've studied a lot of sort of communist ideology, and kind of the basic argument with Marx early on is that the rich have stolen the resources of the workers. And there needs to be this global revolution where we seize the means of production and distribute things openly between the working people. So that we have equality. Once we have equality, once the bourgeoisie have been taken down and they've been distributed among the people, then Earth will be perfect. We'll have good education. We'll have a good society. We'll have good healthcare. We'll have everything that we need. And so it's actually a very easy thing to sell when you're going through villages, right? So in the Soviet Union, in Ukraine, there were some people called the kulaks. And the kulaks were these farmers who had managed to succeed at farming. Because up until the Tsars, everyone was basically a serf in Russia, essentially a slave. They just worked the land, they didn't own anything. And then eventually they got, about 50 years before this, they got their own property. And in that 50 years, some people had managed to take their land. They'd maybe build a house, succeeded, become good farmers, maybe even hire a couple people. And then the local communists would go to the village and say, these people here, they are successful because they're oppressors. They've stolen this wealth from you, and what should be theirs it should be yours. So it is your civic virtue to go and take it. You can take this. You can lock them in prison. You can rape their wives. You can take their stuff. All of that. And not only is it okay for you to do that, it's a civic good for do that. This is a way of bringing about justice. By having the oppressors have revenge against the oppressed. And so what happens is they send all these people to these camps in Siberia where most of them die because Siberia is freezing. And guess what happens to the people that took their stuff and are now the farmers? They don't know how to make food as well as the people who had actually been succeeding. So 6 million Ukrainians died of starvation. So a big part of this worldview is there's a few elements that are relevant here. One is this idea of building this earthly utopia that's ushered in by the state. The other is that Marx taught that religion is the opiate of the masses. It's basically something that keeps everyone asleep so that it's this injustice that needs to be rid from society. So in the Soviet Union and in China, religious leaders were often put in these re-education camps as well, so that they wouldn't spread their ideals, so that the revolution would continue properly. And think about, just from a communist perspective, right? Forget all the human power and ego in there. Just from a communist perspective, the whole goal of communism is to build utopia on Earth. But it's an inherently atheist system. So China is an officially atheistic country. So think about what you said. At the very beginning of us having this conversation, you said, I'm not concerned about the consequences in this life. I'm concerned about the consequences in the afterlife. That is fundamentally diametrically opposed to a communist worldview. Because the whole idea is you fall in line to build this utopia here. If you're not with us, you're against us. And you're going to ruin it for the rest of us with your opiates that are clouding your thoughts. So anyone who has strong religious feelings, they have to do their best to get rid of. So then the other part of it is with the solution to all these things is by concentrating power in the hands of the state. And the state has to then become this huge, unquestioned authority which answers to everything. However, if you're talking to a Christian or a Muslim, that's just untenable in our worldview. You cannot have the state be the ultimate authority over everything. We believe that truth is objective, that God has revealed himself, and that we will give an account for our lives, and that the ends do not justify the means, and humans have this innate dignity. The individual has innate dignity rather than this idea of the greater good, which communism does, right? That, well, if we have to kill 6 million people, but as a result we bring out utopia for everyone else, then that justifies it. That makes life as best as possible, right?
Because it justifies the upcoming people who will live in that utopia, who will have a better life than the ones who had to die for it. So it's kind of like sacrificing the people for a better outcome. But I definitely agree. I mean, even like, in Islam, we're supposed to abide by, our state's laws, our country's laws. But with the Chinese Communist Party, with the Uyghurs who are there and thinking, okay, but the Chinese Communist Party has violated so many of my religious beliefs and our human right beliefs, then why should I abide by them in that case? And that's how you know when you mix communism and religion together, it doesn't add up for that reason, because it's a violation of many religious and cultural and human right rules.
Right. But what's fascinating about this is most states have some freedom of religion clause in their constitution in some way. Even China does. So not only are they violating the Bible's rules or Quranic rules, the government is actually violating their own laws at this point.
Of course.
To do these things. It reminds me of my friend Shorat, who's the Christian I was telling you about from Turkmenistan. And he was actually a lawyer. And and Turkmenistan was not a communist country at the time, but it still had this post-Soviet system to it. And so he held church services in Ashgabat, and the police would come, they'd put him on a train, and they'd send him back to his village. But the first stop, he'd just get out and walk back. And then eventually they kicked him out of his apartment, and then he took him to court, and they're outside the court. He says, look, you can't do this. Our constitution guarantees freedom of expression and freedom of religion, and you're breaking the law by doing this. And the police officer says to him, the government agent says to him, those laws that are written down, those are written for foreigners. For you, we could just kill you. We're just waiting for the order. Right? This does not apply to you. You just listen to the government. And that's kind of the way these things have always operated. It's this infection of... It's like this. The communist system says there is no God, there's nothing beyond this life. But it always, always, always results in the man in the top of that system kind of filling that God void in the culture. He thinks he's a god, he acts with godlike authority, and tries to be the supreme being for everything. I'm going to supply all your needs, I'm going to destroy everything that's evil, and it's a mess.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And thank you for educating me on that, because with the Communist Party especially, and communism in general, it's my first hands-down experience learning about that through what China is doing to the Uyghurs. And so I believe that, looking at this from a religious perspective and seeing what Xi Jinping is doing, it kind of makes me understand because, what the majority of Uyghurs are that they are Muslim, and, some of them are practicing, some of them are not. And, in our religion, we see that, God is the most knowing, most merciful, most loving, and most forgiving. But with Xi Jinping, with imposing this Chinese Communist Party within East Turkestan, he's kind of trying to replace the image of God with himself to the Uyghurs in that sense. And that's how he's taking over the mindset of all of these people, because the Chinese Communist Party wants them to obey one thing, and it's not God, but it's them.